With 8 years spent in development limbo and countless promises that Cyberpunk would be the best thing since sliced bread, it's no wonder fans had such high hopes for the title. And while the game is extremely fun and one of the best releases of 2020, it is incredibly flawed. Yeah, some of the bugs in this game are just wild, but you know what else is wild? The cut features that would have made this game even better. And it's interesting to look back at some of the features that didn't quite make it. So today, we'll be taking a look at 10 ideas or features that didn't make it into the final cut of the game. Let's jump into it. Number 10, an immersive system of fast travel. If there's one thing CD Projekt Red promised us, it was the creation of Night City as a living, breathing metropolis, filled with a number of NPCs with their own daily routines. This created the impression that gamers would essentially be getting lost in the city, which would be filled with both activities and behaviors, creating an immersive experience that we have never seen before. Now, by looking back at previous trailers, the fast travel system in Night City was no different, consisting of a working network of trains which could be used to travel quickly from A to B. A system like this would have seen you get onto a train and travel with the use of some featured animations, actually giving a sense of immersive roaming when traveling throughout the city. What we're left with though is nothing more than a lazy implementation of basic fast travel points, which, in a sense, kind of takes players out of the immersion created by the game's intricate storyline. And it's not like this system doesn't exist, as several people have discovered interconnected train tracks and various unfinished train stations spread throughout Night City. Now, while CD Projekt Red did confirm that they were cutting this feature a while back, it's still kinda disappointing to see some of the unfinished mess that was left behind here, and in general, it would have been a cool feature to add to the immersion of the game. Number 9, the ability to inspect weapons and items. Another idea that was showcased in one of the gameplay reveal trailers was the ability to inspect items, ranging from cybernetic modifications to toxic-looking energy drinks. Considering just how much effort CD Projekt made in creating these various items, it is a shame that such an idea was never fully incorporated into the finished product. As previously shown, accessing the in-game menu would allow the player to select an item and enter what was then termed the inspection system, allowing a thorough investigation of any item that had been looted. Not only did this allow for players to see the true difference between weapons from Budget Arms and Arasaka, for example, it also played a role in gameplay. According to this earlier trailer, a closer inspection of some items would help in solving quests encountered along the way, and would likely result in extra dialogue options since you had taken the time to investigate further. And while not specifically needed, I can't help but wonder why this system was removed, especially when time was spent on the little details in this game. In general, I feel like it's another feature that would have been great to be able to use. Number 8, character background checks. From the very start, Cyberpunk's character creator was often described as one of its best features, allowing for the creation of many different versions of the playable V. This creative menu was actually shown as far back as 2018, and included, among other things, a comprehensive backstory that could be created on the fly. Rather than choosing between 3 different life paths, players would have the ability to choose their childhood hero, key life-altering event, and why they had chosen to move to Night City, with 3 options being available for each category. Being able to choose your own specific background would have been a definite plus to have in-game, and while this was eventually changed into what we now know as the life path system, I can't help but feel as though having even more options when it comes to who you want to be would have been great. Instead, what we're left with was a system that promised to be game-changing, but in reality doesn't change all that much, with each life path basically becoming merged into one in the later stages of the game. Number 7, comprehensive combat drugs. Earlier gameplay trailers also revealed the existence of combat drugs and enhancers, which could be used to get a leg up on your competition. One that comes to mind is the Reflex Booster, which we see V inhale to activate his Kerenzikov for a few seconds. This of course slows down time and allows him to clear a room full of enemies with no trouble. Again, what we're left with though is a list of consumables that may look very different, but operate in exactly the same way. And while the time-altering Kerenzikov and Sandy Vistan is still available in-game, it now comes in the form of an ability that attaches to a specific piece of cyberware. In other words, it can be activated automatically when performing a specific maneuver, or manually when a specific operating system has been installed. The inclusion of combat drugs and enhancers would have not only remedied this oversaturation of identical consumables, but allowed far more choice than we currently have, and again, is another feature that unfortunately just didn't make the cut. Number 6. Brain dancing outside of missions. The concept of brain dancing is something that shows just how innovative Cyberpunk was set to be. I mean, what's more futuristic than exploring the recorded memories and emotions of others by reliving them as yourself? Better yet, we discover early that V has the ability to move outside of these experiences and investigate them from different perspectives, giving off a real caped crusader type of vibe. Unfortunately, for players who got caught up in the braindance hype, there are only a few instances in story-driven missions where you'll have access to this method of investigation. Worse yet, it appears that CD Projekt Red definitely had plans to make this feature a lot more prominent. This can be seen by the numerous brain dances that can be collected or brought on the streets. Purchasing an item like this will, however, do nothing more than fill up your inventory, and cannot be accessed even though you was given your own braindance headset near the beginning of the game. It's a missed opportunity to say the least, and I hope CD Projekt Red decides to remedy it sometime in the future. Number 5. The 6th attribute. Although not specifically removed from the game, the availability of a 6th attribute slot has given Cyberpunk a bit of an unfinished look. Whether CD Projekt Red had initially planned on adding a 6th attribute score, or might do so with some sort of update or DLC, I have no idea, but there's no doubt that something is up with this empty slot. Moving your cursor over it gives off a glitch effect after all, which must have been added for some or other reason. As of right now, completing the game in its entirety does nothing to unlock this 6th node of secrecy. But this hasn't stopped loyal fans from thinking about what this could mean for the future of Cyberpunk. Could it be an attribute score linked to the skills of Johnny Silverhand? Or maybe it's connected to the future exploration of the Crystal Palace in space, which we've all seen in that secret ending. That being said, let's not get our hopes up, as it could very well be just another idea that was removed from Cyberpunk because of complicating factors. Who knows? Number 4. Stripped down Ripperdocs. Back in 2018, fans of Cyberpunk were faced with an official 48-hour walkthrough of the game, which gave an intricate look into the operation of Ripperdocs. From this walkthrough, we were convinced that street surgeons such as these would be an incredible way to keep the immersion of the game alive while changing gameplay in a number of different ways. Rather than improving your character by selecting a node on a skill tree, you'd be having surgery performed on yourself, making actions like double jumping far more believable in the world. And while this is still true in principle, the immersive surgery animations and explanations given during this walkthrough are not what we currently have in-game. Visiting a Ripperdoc in the finished product looks no different than the Cyberware menu in V's options, with the selection of new upgrades and operating systems having no surgical animations attached to their installations at all. I'm not really sure why they changed this, because truth be told, it looked way better back in 2018. Number 3. Fundamental changes to Cyberware. Back in its development cycle, CD Projekt Red also showcased the various cybernetic enhancements V could have installed as placeholders for melee weapons. And while the Mantis Blades operated similarly to what we have today, both the Gorilla Arms and the Monowire were outlined as something a little different. Rather than encapsulating the whipping cyberware we can now pick up, the Monowire was described as a stealth weapon that could either take enemies out without anyone noticing, or hack enemies from a distance to pull off some crazy effects. Somewhere along the line, however, it was changed from something that scales with call to a weapon that scales with body, much like the Gorilla Arms. Speaking of, the Gorilla Arms were also meant to be so much more than strong fists that can make street brawls easier to complete. Essentially, this cybernetic enhancement would also allow you to force open locked doors and rip turrets apart, but somewhere along the line this was removed and replaced by merely upgrading your body attribute score. What's interesting about this though is that CD Projekt Red never did remove this from the in-game description of the gorilla arms. If you go in-game right now and check, it will still say that they can be used in this manner, when they definitely can't be. Number 2. Different weapon stats. Now, previous gameplay footage shows that weaponry in Cyberpunk used to be a lot more varied. It's true that we still have ample choice when it comes to deciding on a specific weapon class or type to suit our build, but what appears to be missing is the inconsistency of weapon stats. When the 48-minute walkthrough was revealed back in 2018, for example, the Rare Vindicator pistol V picked up had ratings connected to its recoil, spread, and range. In the finished product, however, these stats have been replaced by a concentration on damage per second, and although we're still able to modify a weapon's rating by installing mods, this operation is a lot more fixed than any of us expected. The older system also made it a lot easier to distinguish between useful and useless weapons, which would have been a lot more handy in my own playthrough. Number 1. Third-person cutscenes and wall running. With the amount of time most of us spent in the character creator, it's a real pity that CD Projekt Red never followed through with their promise of incorporating some third-person cutscenes into the game. Without these, it really feels like the only times we can truly appreciate V is when you're looking in the mirror or riding through Night City on his trusty arch. And while maintaining a first-person experience is great for keeping immersion at an all-time high, we've already seen that this could be done in far better ways, as shown from one of the gameplay trailers. I mean, just look at how clean some of these third-person cutscenes look, and truth be told, what is the most likely scenario here is that CD Projekt Red had some trouble when it came down to rendering these cutscenes with the different versions that V could take. The same can be said about their decision to remove the Mantis Blade wall running from the game, an idea that was also cancelled due to what the studio called design reasons. As shown from the gameplay trailer again, you can see a guy clearly wall running with the Mantis Blades, and in general, that would have been great in my opinion. This would have added to the stealth of the game, and it would have been pretty incredible to be able to wall run over enemies without them ever knowing of the doom that awaits them from above. Either way, these are some great ideas / features that Cyberpunk were working on, and for whatever reason, just didn't make it into the final cut. If you made it to the end of this video, be sure to drop a like down below, it's always greatly appreciated on the channel, and check out part 1 to this video on screen right now.